Welcome back to Tolkien with Friends, and today we are talking about the absolute chaos that is Barrels Out of Bond. We are so excited to welcome our friend Kari, who you may know as a Star Wars Tia, to the podcast today. And, while we have all been longtime fans of Kari, we didn't officially meet until the NYC premiere of Rings of Power last August. And, I think once you take a photo with Ismael Cruz Cordova together, then you're friends forever,
That's
right?
it. It's done.
Icons, every one of you.
Absolutely. Like literally, we just like pushed ourselves towards Ismael. Like, no, we're gonna take a picture. That's it. We're doing this.
Yeah. I know, because there was a reception before the show of the first two episodes, and they were like, don't
fan out.
be too crazy.
Don't be creepy like that.
Don't go fan crazy.
But then we were like, okay, well, we just saw him like give a performance of a lifetime. So what am I supposed to do? Right?
Absolutely.
Very gracious, very lovely.
Yeah, he was really, really nice. So that was awesome.
Yeah. So Kari, tell us a little bit more about you. Where can people find you if they aren't following you already?
Okay, so yeah, guys, I'm Kari, aka Star Wars Tia. You can find me at Star Wars Tia on TikTok and Twitter, and on Instagram as Kari Skywalker. I do, I'm majorly like a Star Wars content creator, but I do everything else. I talk about everything, Lord of the Rings, Marvel, any type of nerdy content and pop culture and stuff. So, and I'm excited to be here because I don't really get to talk about Lord of the Ring Tolkien stuff a lot. I mean, I'm on my journey learning from everybody, from you guys, from everyone else, because I just became a fan once the movies came out. So before that, I didn't know anything about the books or anything else. So I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you. I think that it's so great to showcase all the different types of fans on various points, right? Because I mean, we have friends that have loved it since the 70s, 80s, and I was like, well, I wasn't there. So, all the way to people that, there's some people on Twitter that I know that have like huge followings, but they just discovered Tolkien like a year or two ago. So, all perfectly valid, all great additions to the fandom. So super, super excited to have you here. But before we get into it, so can you tell us more about your personal history with Tolkien and more specifically The Hobbit? How did you come to the movies? How did you come to the book? And just, how did they inform your experience with Lord of the Rings and Middle-earth?
So basically, I fell in love with the Lord of the Rings movies. So once they announced that the Hobbit movies were going to come out, I was like super excited. I love that we were going to get lore going back because since I hadn't read the books, and that means I was going to be able to learn more about, everything, all the rest of the stories and everything. And, just being able to get more of of knowledge from, how Bilbo came to get the ring at all, or more things about the elves and the dwarves and everything. It was really exciting for me. Again, I haven't read the books or anything, but again, learning through you guys and everything. Even though The Hobbit wasn't my favorite afterwards, but I did enjoy it because regardless, I love fantasy. I love the history there, the being able to imagine all the things that are going on, escape to that reality. It's always amazing to me. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, and I think that like we've all had various experiences with the Hobbit movies, and there are a lot of enjoyable things about them. And if Chris were here, he would tell me 100% of it is enjoyable. I'm still struggling a little bit. So, I mean, we'll see a little bit. And honestly, this part of the movie isn't too bad, but then there's just parts of it where I think it wants to do too much, and it's like it can't sit with itself. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was watching Return of the King last night in a movie theater, and I was just thinking about all these little moments that don't necessarily like move the plot forward, but they're just like character moments. They're just kind of like soft beats. And like, for example, when you have the scene where Frodo is explaining to Sam that Ithilien, or that land right outside of Mordor, used to be a part of Gondor, and they see that old statue, right? And it's the head of it is on the ground, but there's like flowers growing on it, and Sam, like a little ray of sunshine, just like in the books, falls on it, and Sam says, "Hey, Mr. Frodo, like the king has got a crown again," and totally unnecessary, right? For the purposes of what they're.
I love that. Yeah.
Right? And it's just these little moments that just kind of not only like expand the world, but just kind of give us like more moments between the characters, you know? It's not like big, it's not splashy. It's just these little moments along the journey, you know? And
yeah, I think it gives it depth.
Absolutely.
And there's also things that they do that really give it scale. Like, I was thinking about how they changed the lighting of the beacons in the movies. So in the books, when Mary has stayed in Rohan. What am I saying? Pippin and Gandalf are traveling into Gondor. They see the lighting of the beacons, and Pippin's like freaked out at first. He's like, "Why is that mountain on fire?" And Gandalf explains what it is, and we just we kind of move past it. In this, like, I love that they have Pippin be the one that lights the first one, and then it sets off that chain of events. And did Peter have to show us this long sequence of every single beacon being lit? Absolutely not. But he does,
but it's
because
just a scene to see. Like, it's just powerful.
Yeah. And it gives us a sense of scale of how far away, Edoras and Minas Tirith are. And it's not completely necessary, right? If he had just shown one beacon, and then we're done, he totally could have, but he didn't. So it's just like little things like that I think we didn't quite get in The Hobbit, which I think is one of the reasons that I struggle with it. Besides, like, less Bilbo. I wanted more Bilbo, honestly, but that's all right. That was just a thought that I had that I wanted to get out while it was still in my brain. But still, Hobbit movies, I mean, lovely cast, great visuals, there's a lot of fun things to look forward to.
Yeah.
So, with all that being said, the last time we saw Thorin and Company in the movie, they were locked up in Thranduil's cavernous home with Bilbo on the loose. So he's got his ring, he's sneaking around. He followed them in, he is not captured. In the book, it isn't until the beginning of this chapter, Barrels Out of Bond, that the full company gets captured by the elves. And we know that Thorin has previously been captured when he was in the forest. And then the elves kind of descend upon the rest of the company and take them in. The dwarves are low-key relieved because they are starving and lost. So they're like, you know what? Yeah. This is better.
Take us to your leader. Yes. Just let us get us out of here.
I'm too tired to fight about it. So, slight difference. I totally get why they didn't do it like that. That's like, they're doing a lot with these movies, so I understand, like, pacing-wise, it makes sense to just keep them all together. The biggest difference, I think, in this first section is the addition of Tauriel. So we've already met her. We've already discussed some cringe moments between her and Kili, like making references to, like, a weapon in his pants, and she's like, no.
Was this in the book?
No. So
movie.
In a movie.
I'm like, wait, I know Tolkien does not write like that. Even I know that.
So in the book, this is 100% male cast. You know what I mean? Like, all the dwarves, Bilbo, even the dragon. It's all dudes. So the movie has added Tauriel. We met her when they were fighting the spiders, and now we're in her hometown, I guess, and she is still hanging out. We saw her lock up the dwarves, but in this section, we see her talking with Thranduil. She does get to talk a little bit more with Kali, and we're getting to know her a little bit more, and we see her talking to Thranduil about the spider problem that they are having in Mirkwood, and they kind of set up a real distinction between Thranduil and Tauriel, because she is concerned about the problem as a whole, like not just the fact that it's in the woodland realm, but that it may spread to other lands. And Thranduil's like, I really don't care. It's not my problem.
That's not my problem.
That's not my problem. And she's like, okay, weird. He also tells her, basically, you can't date Legolas in this part of the movie. And so, I was thinking about this, and besides like a couple of moments so far, I think she is a nice addition. It's nice to show not just like a bunch of dudes. Of course, Thranduil's kingdom would have some women elves participating in these escapades. We've already established that she's a strong fighter, that she's not only concerned about the welfare of her people, but, the world at large, with the whole spider situation. And she even gives us a book reference when she's telling Kali about the feast they're having. She kind of goes in and, I don't know, she's like kind of in charge of the dwarves' imprisonment, but not totally. Like there's other guards that watch them, but she checks on them, I guess. And she also later does get upset that they have escaped in a little bit. But, she goes into, like, I guess, have a little peek, and Kali is playing with this rune stone, and they kind of talk about what it means to him, and they also talk about he hears there's like a party going on, and he asks her about it, and she explains that it's a feast, for the stars, or like to celebrate light and things, and she adds that wood-elves love best the light of the stars. And this is almost a direct quote from the previous chapter, Flies and Spiders, when Tolkien tells us more about the Woodland King and his people. So I really thought that was nice use of, there's a ton of information that Tolkien gave us in that previous chapter about the wood-elves and what they're like, and so I'm glad that Tauriel kind of gets to represent that. The problem with Tauriel, in my opinion, is that they keep trying to tie her romantically to other characters. And I'm like, first it's flirting with Kali, and, if memory serves, I know that continues, like they become a whole thing. But also, like, the whole thing with Thranduil telling her that Legolas has a crush on her, but he would never allow the relationship.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of like, why do that? Like she can't just exist as a captain of the guard, or, just like we've talked about, like she could serve as like this moral compass amongst the elves. She's the only one so far that we've really seen that's concerned with bigger issues besides what's going on in Mirkwood. And because they've kind of portrayed a lot of these elves kind of as jerks. But Tauriel kind of provides this contrast to them. And so it's like, why do we have to have everyone in love with her? You know what I mean? Like, just as far as like the larger narrative, like, is it because she's the only woman we've seen on the planet so far? Like, I mean, Galadriel is here. We have seen Galadriel. What do you know? Like, I don't get it. I don't like the implication that her purpose in the story has to be falling in love with somebody. And I think they sowed some seeds there that I feel like they should have followed those to use her in more impactful and meaningful ways. But I wanted to hear what you all thought about Tauriel at this point.
So I think that I might agree with you on that. I think that, obviously we all love a good romantic story, a good romance and everything. But it felt it might be that it was kind of forced because what was the purpose of them, like her, especially her with Kili, like, I get it that, that's that they're spending time together and things, when people spend time together, things tend to happen. But in the sense of the story, I don't think it was necessary. Like you said, she's out here she's out here worried about everything else that's going on. They're going on this adventure, on this journey, on this fight, and I think they could have just left it at that, and it would have the story would have been great. There was no reason to add unnecessary things into it, especially if you're saying that it didn't happen in the books either like that. Like, there was no reason for that to happen in the movies as well. Just to, like, I don't know, please, I don't know who they were trying to, appease with this.
That's it. Like, who were you trying to please with
Yeah,
this?
exactly.
We're all wondering because it's like, it's almost like there's so many things that they're trying to do to, like, exactly parallel Lord of the Rings, and they were like, well, Arwen was there, like, and they also kind of adjusted Eowyn to kind of be extra in love with Aragorn in the movies, where it was like a little more toned down, and like, of course we have the whole Arwen Aragorn thing, but it's just like, that's not every people just don't have to be in love all the time. Like, I don't know, like, and even if there was like some flirting, sure, but I know that they kind of like amp it up later on in the story. I don't know. I just think that, like, it was a really interesting choice to add her in, and I think that they just made it a really superficial character choices here, where she could have been a little bit more meaningful to,
like, why couldn't she just be part of the group and they were just trying to help? It didn't have to be like somebody had to fall in love because she's the woman in the group, and it had to happen. It didn't. It really did not have to go that way. Yeah.
So that's my feeling. I think that we're gonna see more of her later, but she does participate in the rest of this, so I'm sure we'll talk about her more. But I think that after this moment, we have Bilbo realizing that he can help save the rest of the company, because they really focus, they do some really focused shots on the guard and his use of the keys, and a little bit different, but along the same lines with the book. They have them drinking the wine and getting a little sloshed, and so they put the keys up. It's not Bilbo actually taking the keys from him. Like, I think it's more like attached to him, like how you would on your belt. But they like put them up because obviously but who's gonna take them? I get it. Like, they put them up, and so Bilbo takes them to rescue the dwarves, and the movie kind of speeds past this part. I would say that was kind of my vibe. They don't really focus on the strategic choices that he makes, and so I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about what goes on in the book here. I also thought it was funny that Beaufort implies that they've only been in Thranduil's cells for one night, because they're complaining about how they're going to be in the cells forever, and he says it must be nearly dawn. And I'm like, if there's only been one dawn, you haven't actually been there that long. But in the book, it's more like 2 weeks, that they spend as captives. And so during this time, Bilbo is able to learn like all the ins and outs of this place, mostly, and survives off stolen snacks, which I think is adorable. Would have loved to see him grab a snack. And he's even able to leave a couple of times. Like he figures out how to be like, so there a few like hunting parties will leave to the caverns to go do whatever they do. And he would get right up behind him, but he's like really afraid of like getting smashed in the door or in the gate or like being
the magic doors.
Yes. Those magic doors will shut as soon as that last elf is on the other side. Okay. So he has to like be right up there, but he doesn't want them to accidentally see his shadow or something because while wearing the ring, you still cast a shadow in certain sunlight. Wow. Okay. So he's like freaked out. I think he leaves a couple of times, but then he's kind of like, I can't keep up with these elves. I'm not going to like go hunting with them. And I don't know how to find, he's like, I'm worried that I will get lost. So he kind of just gives up on that, like trying to find like an alternative exit from the outside. But what he does end up doing in his wandering is finding out about the wine cellar. And there is a part where when he is kind of feeling sad about his situation, he has a realization that if anything was to be done, it would have to be done by himself. And I think it's just a really nice moment where it's like Bilbo realizing that he can't really rely on anyone. Like he's wishing Gandalf was there, that any of the dwarves were really available. And he realizes that it's really all down to me. Like I can't call anyone, it's either we're going to be stuck here forever until, well, if Thorin decides to give Thranduil any information, they could get out potentially. Yeah. But Thorin has very much decided that Bilbo is still, like, he knows that Bilbo was there with them, and he's like, nobody say shit. Nobody say anything about what we're doing or why we're in the forest to begin with. Bilbo has got this. And Bilbo is like, well, I guess I've got this.
But it didn't show that in all of that. Yeah, like you said, they didn't show. I would have loved to seen that, him having that struggle of, like, am I going to be able to do this? I guess everything is on me right now. There's a lot of weight on my shoulders. And oh my God, like, it would have been nice to see that. Like you said, they missed those moments and those marks with those little details then. Because that would have been cool to see.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things about The Hobbit is really not like I think in the Hobbit movies, they really try to move us from like action sequence to action sequence, which there is some of that in here in this section as well. And so they kind of skip over all these really character building moments for Bilbo, but really like Bilbo is the shining light of this story. You know what I mean? Like he's the most relatable one. He is supposed to be our main character, but in the movies, it feels more like Thorin in a lot of ways, or at least
I agree with that.
or at least just the dwarves in general. So we miss out on some of my favorite things about the Hobbit book, and so I think that also is why I kind of struggle with the movies. But I get it. Not every adaptation is going to be what you imagined in your head. They made some choices. Choices were made, and that's cool, but I do want people to know that, Bilbo has he has a lot of these really cool character building moments, and I love that. So he does go on to discover the water gate, which, we see in the movie is under the wine cellar. And it does talk about, and what I was thinking about, because in The Return of the King that I was watching last night, it's just funny that it's juxtaposed like this with this episode, because the point where Gimli and Legolas have that drinking contest, and Gimli is the one that passes out, but the only canonical record of people getting drunk and falling asleep are elves. I just want to throw that out there. Because in this they are beasting, and Tolkien specifically talks about how this, like, it's not easy to get an elf drunk, but this particular wine that is the king's favorite is very strong. And the guard and the captain, I can't remember what the two roles are that sit there, and they say, like, oh, let's, we're not joining in we're supposed to be doing some task, but we're waiting for other people to help us get rid of all these barrels, so we're going to drink this wine, and they both fall asleep. So I just want to put that out there, that, haha, it's funny to see Gimli talk about getting drunk and talking about going swimming with little hairy women, but it is elves who are the ones that know how to party, okay? I just want that on the record. So when this happens in the book, Bilbo realizes, like, oh shit, like, he was already thinking about this Watergate and how that might be a potential escape route, but he was like, wow, this is probably going to be the only time where most people are busy partying. These guys are literally asleep at the wheel. I gotta move. And so he goes, gets the dwarves, and what I also think is really cute about the book is that the other dwarves don't know that Thorin has been captured, and they definitely don't know that he is in the same place as them, and Bilbo's the one that finds that out and, like, tells them all. And also the fact that Thorin is imprisoned separately from, like, everyone is kind of imprisoned in various locations, so Bilbo has to go round them all up on the way to the cellars.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then when they realize what, I think that they nod to this in the movie, when he finally gets them to the cellar and he tells them to get in the barrels, and they're like, that's nuts. When he tells them that in the book, they're very much like, nope. But
we're not doing this.
But his response to them is like, okay, get back in your cells. I will lock it up, and then you can figure out the next time that we can escape. Okay? And that's where they're like, okay, I guess we're doing this.
It's like, if we have to, fine.
Yeah, they're like, because they don't have any ideas. You know what I mean? It's Bilbo that's the one that's coming up with the ideas and the plans, because they got nothing. That, he's the only one that knows the place anymore. And so he gets them into these empty barrels, and slight difference. So in the movie, Bilbo is the one that, like, pulls this lever to tip them all into the water. And I get it. In movies, typically they don't like to cover actors' faces. That's why a lot of the time people will, like, end up finding a reason to take off their helmet in shows and stuff, because it's like, we want those moneymakers on the screen. So he does not cover the barrels, but he does in the book. He, like, makes sure to pack them really. He, like, tries to fill the ones.
Okay.
He covers them and tries to plug any holes and stuff so that they're not, like, horribly
drowning. Yes.
Yeah. So he does try. In both versions, he does not get in his own barrel, and so what happens with this, in the movie, we know he kind of, like, triggers the levee, like, the system to open again, and then he just jumps in the water. In the book, basically the elves are the ones that are pushing off all the barrels into the stream, and they're basically like, dude, to the, the wine cellar guy, they're like, hey, these are not empty. And he's like, we are behind schedule because you were late to come help me. Push him in. Those are the correct barrels. And they're like, okay, but if they had had more time, they totally would have been found out at this point.
Yeah.
And we have a couple of different moments like that where the elves are like, if only we had had more time to investigate these barrels. That's really the only reason they don't get caught. So they get swept in, and Bilbo has to grab onto the last one while wearing the ring, so he's invisible, and just falls into the water, gets super wet. Of course, in the movie, everybody's getting wet because nobody's got a lid on. Like, it's just immediately chaos. Also, they're immediately chased by the elves in the movie. So they're like, trying to like go faster by kind of swimming a little bit, trying to propel their barrels forward. But in addition, we also have, orcs kind of following, because of course we do. They've figured out where the river comes out of Thranduil's castle thing, and it's not a castle. His house doesn't have a name, which I honestly like struggled with. Like Elrond has Rivendell, Galadriel has Lothlorien or Caddis Galathon or whatever. Thranduil's house doesn't have a name.
Just like the Woodlands. That's it.
It's like they call it the Woodland Realm, but that's like
the whole thing. Yeah.
I'm kind of bummed out. And if it is named somewhere, they didn't list it in the book, which I don't know. Which thought it was weird. So, because it's not like a house. I mean, it's kind of fortress-like with the way that it's built underground, But anyway, they escape. Orcs and elves are chasing them, and they're just like in barrels. And they actually have a gate in the movie, that actually closes. More chaos ensues. Kili gets hit with an orc arrow. And it's very reminiscent of what I think a Middle-earth theme park would be like. Like, it's very much like that would be, I'm like, the way it's like the rapids and them moving around. I'm like, I could see this as like a water ride. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. That is the first thing I thought. Yeah, and then my second thought was, wow, we have lost the plot.
Which is funny because that's like one of my most memorable things from the movie, from all three trilogies. I don't know why it is, because it looks so much fun. It looks like so much fun. I was like, oh my God, I love this. And then all the craziness going on of them shooting arrows and the elves trying to like jump over them and everything. That stuck in my head for some reason. I guess that was the reason they did it that way, because it really does stick with you, because it's like such a fun adventure. And I remember thinking, dude, this would be such a good like whitewater raft ride or something.
I know. And it's like, if we had gotten a Middle-earth theme park post the Hobbit movies, I would have said it was worth it. But here we are with no theme park. So I'm not sure that it paid off. I mean, it was just a lot. And I feel like at this point, Peter has like thrown so many moments like this at us. I'm like, all right, whatever, Peter. Like, you gonna do what you're gonna do. But like, did anyone else find Legolas standing on the dwarves a little excessive?
Yes, it did. I'm like, why are you stepping on him? Like we get it that you did this
to show his disrespect.
Yeah, like I get it. We know you're very acrobatic from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Like you could jump anywhere and everywhere, but there was no reason to step on these people. Like there was no reason for him to do that.
Yeah, I was just like, that's a little rude. Like, why is Legolas so mean? Legolas was never this mean. Like, from insulting Gimli's baby photo to standing on Dwalin's head.
I did. Like, I was like, Legolas was very sweet and kind in the other trilogy. What happened? Like, I guess maybe he grew up a little bit more, by the time we got to Lord of the Rings or something. But he was like very like fresh, I thought. I was like, okay.
Yeah. I was like, all right. Legolas, take a chill pill. One thing that I wanted to point out, if anyone has read Anything You Can Imagine, Peter Jackson and the Making of Middle-earth by Ian Nathan, this book references, it talks about the making of Lord of the Rings specifically, and a little bit of The Hobbit. And there was a point where it talks about things that didn't make the cut, like plans that Peter had where production things happened and they couldn't do it. Peter had take this however you want it. But Peter originally wanted to do a rapid scene on the Anduin when it's, Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, and our Hobbit friends are like leaving Lothlorien. He wanted to throw in some rapids there, but it didn't happen due to weather and like timing and stuff. And I'm like, Peter, are you telling me you've always been like this? And and you found a reason.
So he just really wanted his water wall ride.
That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm reading. And sometimes, as much as we love the Lord of the Rings movies, it just makes me wonder if they were a happy accident. If Peter had gotten to do all the insane things that he had thought of, you know what I mean? Like, it's possible that they would have gotten cut anyway, but there are some stories in this book where I'm like, if that had happened, if they had included that, I mean, like, way to just throw off the whole flow of that moment in the movie. Like, sir.
Yeah.
Sir?
That would have been a very weird moment to do something like that, because...
Yeah. But he obviously kept thinking about it because we got.
Yeah, no, he definitely wanted it. And he was like, "I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna do this Hobbit trilogy. I'm gonna put it in there."
So
okay, Peter, we get it.
Yeah, I know. He's just. I love him. He's a little nuts, but that's okay. That's okay. So they go on, and I stopped this part of the movie when Bard kind of shows up, when they kind of pull over. They seem to have eluded the orcs, and Bard shows up. But before we see this little moment where they're realizing that Kili is injured and they're kind of like trying to dry out, in the book, it's more like there's certain points on the river where like elves will push the group of barrels. They make sure that they don't get stuck, and they keep them moving. But there is like a way that the river kind of juts out, and they all kind of collect there, and then they tie them all together. So Bilbo never lets them out of the barrels until like they get closer to Lake Town. So it's like a couple of days that they are in these barrels, which I just think is
horrible.
horrific.
And it's cold and they're wet.
In the book.
In the books, they're like that long inside the water. Oh my god.
Yeah. So they at least have to stay a whole night and into the next day in these barrels. And Bilbo, he's not in a barrel, but he is sopping wet. And so there is like a little village or camp or something near where the elves are corralling these barrels to be sent down the river the next morning. And he goes off and he steals like a pie and some wine and a loaf of bread. But he like has caught a cold from conditions, and he's sneezing, and so he's like wearing his ring and he's secret, but then people are finding his little wet footprints, and like his sneezes are giving him away. So he wakes up the next day, like he finally falls asleep, but he's feeling sick. And the rest of the dwarves are just like, they will tell him about how they feel, I'm sure, in the next chapter. But in this part of the movie, it kind of changes that, obviously, because they're not packed in there. I do just want to know that sounds terrible, and I don't really know who had it better, like Bilbo or the dwarves in that situation. Awful.
Poor thing. Oh my god, I can't imagine.
Like, ow! Like my body physically hurts just thinking about being like stuffed in
wet
a barrel
for that long, and just and then with like your body like being contorted. Oh my god!
And like you're being bumped around, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not like it's just you're staying still. You have to stay all crooked while getting hit every time that something happens to the barrel. That's crazy.
I hate it. So
oh my gosh,
feel bad for them.
It's times like these where I'm just like, wow, the book version is a lot worse, but not cinematic.
Yeah.
Right? Like, how do you convey that, like, on screen, really?
I mean, you'd have to get, like, a
that
camera,
misery, like, that pain and that, like, horribleness.
Yeah. And there was no way they were gonna like pack away these actors for a huge amount of time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so I get it. But in case you didn't know, that's how that goes down. And my back hurts just thinking about it.
Yes. Oh my God. I'm like, need to stretch right now.
I know, right? I'm like, I feel it. I feel it. There was also some fun additions to the movie that not in the appendice. Like, we've kind of left all of Tolkien, but I don't really care because I love Ian McKellen so much. Like, Gandalf in every scene, I'm just like, nom, 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 nom. I love it.
Give me more.
Yeah. So at this point, we get back to what the heck Gandalf has been up to. We do a little cut away from the chase scene for a minute. And, you know, in both the book and the movies, he dips out as the dwarves enter Mirkwood. He's like, I got stuff to do. I gotta go. In the movie, the implication is that he's going to double check that grave that is supposed to contain the Witch King is in fact holding the Witch King. And you know, we've talked about this a couple of times, but like, there is no body. You know what I mean? Like, the Witch King has doesn't die. He hasn't died. He was never, he had a rent, you know what I mean? He's a wraith. That's the whole thing. But whatever, Peter, have your pretend dead Witch King. That's cool. But I really did like this scene between Gandalf and Radagast anyway. Like, just throwing, like, how logistically this doesn't make sense out the window, but I thought the scene was enjoyable nonetheless. So I think Gandalf is supposed to be in Rhudaur, which is basically the point. It's a part of the old kingdom of Arnor. It's basically the point on the opposite side of the Misty Mountains from where they currently are, near where Arnor and Angmar meet. So it's like the most northern point of the Misty Mountains. Obviously, that's also a logistical nightmare. Like, they crossed them. How did he get back over there? I don't know. Maybe an eagle helped him out. We'll give him that. And so he sees the tomb that is obviously broken out of. Like, it's all like there was clearly some kind of cage and it's like mangled. It's not doing its job anymore. And Radagast just shows up because this is very important business, I guess, and Gandalf needed him there. I do think it's kind of funny that they did not include him in any of the White Council scenes that we've seen so far, you know, where it's like Saruman, Galadriel, Elrond. Radagast, not invited to that. Gandalf specifically reaches out to him about this. So, you know, maybe it's like showing some distrust between Gandalf and Saruman here for the movie anyway. You know, not only because Saruman did in the movie dismiss Gandalf's concerns about smog and, you know, the blade and all of that. But also Gandalf doesn't send the highest wizard in his order to an invite to this. So I thought that was pretty interesting for, at least for the movie purposes. But my favorite part is where Radagast asks who was buried there. Because Radagast doesn't even know what we're doing here, you know?
It's like, and Gandalf, what is going on?
He's like, I showed up because I'm a good friend, but could you fill me in? And Gandalf responds, if he had a name, it's long since been lost. He would have only been known as a servant of evil, one of a number, one of 9. And I was like, yes! I was like, that is a good writing. Like, that's what I want. You know what I mean? Like, spooky Gandalf. That's my favorite Gandalf. So I really liked that. And, you know, of course, this leads to a discussion of the necromancer, who we've kind of referenced before, supposedly chilling in Dol Guldur in the southern part of Mirkwood. And Gandalf's conclusion, and that this is not some magic man in the woods, but Sauron. And I think this may be the first, possibly only time that the movies confirm that Sauron is not human. So I think we had this conversation way back when we were covering Lord of the Rings, where I don't know if it was one of our guests or somebody that hadn't really read the books, and so I think that it's fair to talk about the confusion around what even is Sauron. You know, is this just is it an elf? Is it a dude? Is it something else? You know, but it's not until this point that you know. Well, Radagast makes a comment like, "Oh, like this couldn't be like a human couldn't have the power to release someone like the Witch King." And Gandalf says, "Who said it was human?" And I think that's the only mention that in the movies about what actually Sauron is. They don't like go into it. They don't say like they don't explain what a Maya is or any of that, or you know what it means to be a Maya or Valar and all of that nitty gritty. But he does explicitly say Sauron isn't just a dude, you know. And so I thought that was interesting because they have never done that before, and I don't know if they will do it again.
That's
maybe
really
in the show
point.
or
yeah. So like in you know what, like as far as the Peter Jackson movies and stuff are concerned, it's like we haven't ever really discussed. Like we don't even we know that Gandalf and Saruman are wizards, but it's never like explicitly stated that that's not just a guy that learned to be a wizard.
With a staff, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting that, you know, Peter decided to include that here. I mean, I like it. I'm down. But I just thought it was interesting that we've never had that discussion before. So I wonder if there were, I mean, and it's such a small moment that it probably goes unnoticed a lot of the time, but I wonder if there were any people that were just strictly movie fans that picked up on that and were like, oh, then what is Sauron? Because we don't actually have the conversation, you know?
Yeah.
Because obviously Radagast in the scene understands what Sauron is.
I think a lot of people assume, if they don't know, like that he's probably an elf of some sort. So
I just assumed he's like some crazy, super old being. I didn't even figure like an elf is just a creation from before time, you know, because he's so old. But I never really thought about what is he really, you know?
So, like, when you were watching the movies, Kari, like, you got the impression that he was something other, but not like...
Yeah. No, not like a humanoid, like an elf or dwarf or anything like that. It was just like an entity, but I never, you know, it was never really like specified, or I never really got clarification of what exactly he was.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't know if we've ever really talked about it. I'm sure that maybe we have, like maybe in one of my early episodes when I was like trying to brain dump to Anna, which I still apologize for those first 2 episodes. Like I was just, I mean, there was no structure. I was just like, here's everything that's different. Oh, and then I got to tell you about this. Oh, and then I got to tell you about that. And I was like, wow, that was a lot. I probably need to reel that in.
We got a lot of episodes to go. We got to pace ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, maybe back then we've talked about like the different, how there are these, I mean, there's really no other way to refer to the Valar other than like gods, you know, more of like the Greek tradition, you know, like with mythology. Yeah. But then we have these like, the Maiar, who are like they are also like eternal in that they were existed before the world, but they are not they kind of choose a Valar to learn from. You know what I mean? Like they're not the guys. And Gandalf and Saruman are a part of that number. The Balrogs are also part of that number, as well as Sauron. So they do not die in the way that like men do, or even elves. You know what I mean? Like, so, and also the elves have a whole other thing, but they don't die. So like all these times, like eventually I think in the Rings of Power, we will see Sauron lose his body, but he's not dead.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with Gandalf. Like he dies. He really just loses the bod, and I think it's Eru that is like, actually, you're still busy. Go back, and they give him a hair dye and a new outfit. Well,
and now he's all white.
Yeah, Galadriel gives him the outfit, but yeah, he gets the white hair and the new do. And with silky. Yes, it is though. Like
so silky.
I know that is funny that like in the movies it's like also shorter. They don't let him have as long of hair.
It's longer than that? Like,
well, I don't know. It never really says how long his hair is. I just know that his beard is supposed to be able to tuck into his belt, right?
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah. Long ass beard.
Should have.
But like, that would be really crazy if he had super short hair and like really long.
Long beard? Yeah.
I'm imagining like Gandalf the Grey is like the movie version. That's pretty on point for like my imagination. But then when he like comes back in the movie, he's got a little bit shorter hair and shorter beard. I think it works for what they're doing. Tolkien doesn't actually describe whether his beard is shorter or longer. Just that he kind of looks like Saruman from a distance,
Okay. Saruman, his hair is long too.
Yeah. I was also noticing how long his fingernails were in the movie.
Yes.
Like, crazy.
They were so long. I was like, Saruman, get a manicure, please.
Could you imagine? Like, he has one of the orcs, like, filing his nails. Maybe Wormtongue does it.
I would say Wormtongue.
You think Wormtongue would do
it? Yeah.
That poor guy.
Oh, my God.
So
spa day with Wormtongue.
I know. Oh, poor guy. But yeah, so we've got we also have a moment where Radagast, Gandalf, which I think is adorable in the movie, he's like, I gotta go help my friends, like shit's going down and I'm not with them. He wants to get back to Thorin and crew. And Radagast is like, dude, if this is what you're saying it is, like everybody in trouble, not just Thorin, But Gandalf is obviously concerned because he knows they're in Mirkwood at the time. And that is where Dol Guldur is. And that's where Sauron's chilling. And so I think soon the rest of the White Council will be involved. I'm sure that like everybody listening to this remembers the Hobbit movies better than I do. I do not. I just remember like glimpses, like random moments, but I can't remember the order of events that they do in the movie. So we will see. At least I will see what happens next with Gandalf. But truly love all the scenes with Ian McKellen in them. I think he's just fabulous as Gandalf, and I give him a pass. His story can go totally off script, and I will still be here for it. So
no, he's amazing. I love him. So good.
Yeah, he's one of those like really bright spots in there for me. I think Martin Freeman is great. They just should have given him more moments. That's the trouble. I can't wait till we get to Smaug. I think that's going to be awesome.
Honestly, my favorite part of The Hobbit is Smaug. He's so cool.
He is really cool.
Yeah.
And he looks great, and they designed him so well. But next time, and still not at Smaug, even though this movie has his name in the title, Desolation of Smaug. We are gonna. He's hardly in it.
I was like, so I was expecting dragons. Damn it!
I know, and they tease him so hard at the end of the first movie where it like ends with him opening his eye. But our next time we are talking about a warm welcome. We're gonna see Lake Town and the master of Lake Town, who's a real dick, and gonna rest up and get ready to head over to Smog, but not quite. We still gotta
Not yet.
figure out the door to the mountain, and then hopefully we'll see him soon. But other than that, is there anything else that from this point, Kari or Kali, that I missed? Any things that made you go or that you just that I left out completely? Because I'm sure there are things that I did just because.
From what I remember, like what I can recollect from the movie, I think you got it down packed. And I like that you were doing the comparison with the books because, again, that helps me out a lot. So that's really cool. But other than that, I think that, other than Thranduil being daddy, I just had to throw that in there.
Yes.
I had to throw that in there. Okay.
The way Lee Pace has captured the imagination of literally everyone in all the ways, if you know what I mean.
Yes. Absolutely. See, I can see a scene with him at any time.
Yeah.
Throw him in there.
True. Yeah, I think that he really brings like a special oomph to Thranduil because he really doesn't get to do much in the book, besides kind of like he tries to interrogate the dwarves because he's like, what the heck are you guys doing here? It makes zero sense. But this Thranduil is a little more like aloof and cool, and I think he's a super fun addition to.
No, he is. I like the attitude that he brings in and just like that air of like, I am beautiful.
Yeah, he's the most fabulous, because it's like, it's also an interesting, like with Elrond, we have him in Rivendell and we kind of know the vibe of that, like everything in Rivendell is just like a chill place. You know what I mean? Like it's set up, it's the last homely house. It's set up as a refuge for literally anyone that, needs that rest and rejuvenation, which I just also think is really beautiful for Elrond's story. Like his life is so
that's
tumultuous.
Just him. Yes.
So for him to like really dedicate that space to everyone taking the chill pill is really nice. And then we have Galadriel, who has set up Lothlorien. She's protecting it with the power that she has, and it's really this kind of reminiscent of Valinor little slice, that like this perfect place that is a little more ethereal, I would say. It's a little more otherworldly, and you're like, whoa, where is this? And then we have the Woodland Realm, which I think is probably the most like down to earth of all. And at the same time, it's like they are. Like in the book, we see them partying and we see them having a good time, but they're also like in a much more dangerous part of the world. Lothlorien is like also in the dangerous part, but she has that extra oomph with, her ring.
The ring.
And
like the Woodland, Thranduil is the only kingdom like that doesn't have a ring to protect it.
That's true.
Wow. Okay.
So, they are, definitely more have their guard up, which absolutely, they're having to deal with these insane spiders. Like, what a time,
Yes.
They're living in a place that has become like it was Greenwood the Great and now has become Mirkwood, and they're trying to live their lives and, enjoy it, but also they're having to struggle with the darkness in a more real way than I think any of the elven kingdoms that we visited before have had to. Like physically fighting spiders every day.
Yeah.
And I know that there must be some they have their own kind of elvish magic. Not only we saw it when like in the book as a reminder when they saw the elves kind of partying in the forest and they approached them in these clearings, they were able to like turn the lights out and leave almost immediately, and then the dwarves are just like, wait, what? Like, what happened? And also, we know that the Elvish road that they use for most of their journey through Mirkwood is protected in some sense, because while they see the spider webs everywhere, they do not cross over this road, which I think is important to note about, like, you know, kind of what they're able to do. Like, they're not without some kind of magic and protection, but it's definitely not to the extent that Rivendell and Lothlorien have, for sure.
Cool.
So it totally makes sense to have, you know, Thranduil being a little bit more like up in arms, you know what I mean?
Yes, a little bit more uppity, like, so I need to look good and protect my kingdom. Like, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's very much more tribal in the sense that, like, he doesn't really want to deal with anyone else. He just wants to protect his people and call it a day, you know? Because, I mean, truly, that is probably a big enough job, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Especially like you said, that he's in a part where it's like constantly at danger of, you know, something crazy happening. So he has to be on it at all times. So I could definitely understand that.
Yeah. So I think, man, that was a part we almost just skipped over. Thrandy over there. That would have been a mistake.
I couldn't let that happen.
Yes. Thank you.
Good thing you're here.
That was important. I know that we talked about that when we were picking which episode you should pop in on. So, yeah, I think he's a cool character. I mean, I'm excited to see more of him, you know, particularly when Thorin loses it. But we shall see. We're going to see Lake Town next time, which will be cool. I know that, like, if I can remember right, like, Peter kind of experiments with different types of architecture. Like in Dale, he kind of tried to give it a look and feel. I don't remember quite the Lake Town vibe, besides it obviously being on a lake. So that'll be fun to revisit. And with that, I think the last thing that I can, you know, remind you about is to not forget to follow us on Instagram and Twitter. That's Tolkien with Friends on Instagram. It's Tolkien Friends on Twitter. And, you know, you can also join us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month if you so choose, for bonus content, including some upcoming bonus episodes, early releases, and my handwritten notes from each podcast, which I have yet to hear if anyone can actually read. So if you join, you'll have to let me know how illegible my handwriting is. And we hope to see you there.